Hi everyone. Okay, so as promised, I am going to sew up a Winterberry wallet. Now, if you haven't already purchased this pattern, it can be purchased from bluecalipatterns.com. Celine, the designer, has created this brilliant wallet, and it is my favorite thing to sew. I've made many of these wallets, and they are my best sellers at craft shows. Friends request them. I've just done a custom Halloween one that I showed in a short video. Um, and I am going to make this one with a fabric that I designed myself. I drew in Procreate on my iPad a Halloween design, and I printed it on printable cotton fabric. So this is the first time I am doing it this way. I've never sewed with my own printed fabric, which is pretty exciting. And we'll get started. So the first thing I want to go over are some of the supplies that you'll need to make this pattern. You may not need all of these things, but these are just the common tools, notions, things that I use when I sew bags or wallets. This particular pattern, I don't really use a whole lot of double-sided tape. I may use this for the zipper or both zippers, but I have a 1/8 inch double-sided tape and a 1/4 inch double-sided tape. As always, I have my nice big container of clips. I prefer to use clips over pins. I have a lighter for sealing the ends of my nylon zippers. If you don't seal the ends after they've been cut, they do fray. So I always have a lighter on hand. I have a heat erasable marking pen. This one I purchased, I think, either on Amazon or Temu. Comes with a bunch of refills in various colors, and this one disappears immediately after you pass an iron over it. I really like these. I have my stiletto and seam ripper. This was handmade by my husband for me. He turned this on his lathe, and it has a really sharp, beautiful seam ripper on one end and a stiletto tool on the other end. I always keep my rotary cutter nearby just in case I forgot to cut a piece or I need to cut something really quickly. I have my little sharp scissors that I love, and just a regular black pen for marking things that won't be seen in the end if I need to use that. In this pattern, we need very little hardware. I have one 18mm snap, and that is for the main tab closure on the front of the wallet. And I have one 14mm snap, and it's very tiny. Sorry about that. But really, that's all the hardware you need other than the 2 zippers and the 2 zipper pulls. Another reason why I really love this pattern. I have chosen to use this nylon number 5 zipper tape with rainbow teeth, pastel rainbow. And there's 2 cuts of that. I will not be giving out measurements to this pattern. If you want a really detailed tutorial, Celine, the designer of this pattern, has a really great tutorial. So I'm going to sew this with all of you. I may sew quickly or go through parts a little quicker, but hopefully you'll get the gist of the pattern and be able to sew along with me. I did get permission from the designer to do this video, but please do go and support an amazing pattern designer. And she also has a shop that carries a lot of really cool vinyl, zipper tape, zipper pulls, hardware. She's an amazing Canadian indie shop, and I love to support my fellow Canadians. Okay, so let's go over the pattern pieces that I've cut. Again, I'm not going to give exact measurements, but I will show you the pattern pieces that I have cut so that if you're sewing this along with me, you'll know what I'm talking about. I have 2 cuts. This is faux leather, just in a black color. I don't know where I purchased this, but this is for the main tab closure on the front of the wallet. I have 4 cuts also with this black vinyl, and this will be for the inside closure, snap closure of the wallet. I have one vinyl cut for one of the inside edges of the wallet and another vinyl cut that has curved edges. I have also cut 2 zipper tabs, and this will go on one of our zippers for the top closure zipper. I have my lining piece that will line my main fabric panel piece. So it will go together with this main panel piece like this. I have this main panel piece, and this is the fabric that I designed myself and printed on my inkjet printer. And I'm going to try this out. I've already interfaced everything with Decovil Light or Peltex. This particular piece was already a little bit stiff, just the nature of the fabric. So I put on top of the woven interfacing, I put some non-woven interfacing as well. This is the outside backing to our main fabric that I've cut, and this does have Decovil Light on the back. This is the main lining piece that will go on the inside underneath the card slots. I have 2 cuts of fabric for the larger zipper pocket. I have 2 cuts of fabric for the smaller zipper pocket. I have a zipper facing piece that I've already marked out. And I have 2 pieces for card slots, and the measurements can be found in the pattern. I've already marked these card slot pieces. Okay, so now that we have all our pieces, let's get to sewing. Okay, so before we get into actually assembling the wallet, there are some preparation steps that we can do ahead of time. I'm going to prepare these card slots. I'm going to do one for you on camera, and I will go ahead and do the other one off camera. But I have my little Oliso Pro mini project iron. And so we have lines that are marked according to the measurements in the pattern. And what we need to do is we need to fold and press along these lines. The way I do this is I will put my thumbs right at the line, and I will fold this over. And the trick here is to just make sure that your edges are aligned properly. If your edges are aligned, that means you will have a straight line where you marked it. So we're basically just folding at the lines, pressing to make a fan fold to create our card slots. So I usually start at the end with the smallest measurement, and I've pressed that, and you can see my line has disappeared. This heat erasable pen is amazing. Now I will move on to my next line, and I'm going to grab that with my thumbs, give a little pinch and fold it over. Make sure my sides are lined up correctly. And I'm going to press this. Okay, move on to my next set. A little pinch, fold over at that line. Try to fold over at that line. Make sure my edges are aligned so I know I'm folding straight. And I will press. And then my last one. And this one I fold from the other direction, and I just flip it up. Make sure my edges are aligned and press. Okay, so what you should have, if you were to unfold this, are 4 fold lines that look like little mountains. So you'll have mountains and valleys. Now, I start at the top of the larger section, and I'm going to fold that back. The next fold, I'm going to bring up and place it where the pattern tells me to place it. There is a measurement here. Once I have it in place, I'm going to press that. Then I'm going to take the next fold and I'm going to bring it up and place it at the same measurement that the pattern indicates. And I'm going to press that. And the last fold, I will bring it up, place it where the pattern instructs me to place it, as straight as possible, and press. Okay, now I have all of that pressed in place. I'm going to just place a couple of clips to make sure that that stays in place. And then I will take this to my machine and we will top stitch each of these folds and then baste the pocket together in place. Welcome back. So the next step that we will go through is top stitching our card slot pockets. So you should already have your pockets ready to go, pressed and folded in the way that the pattern directs. And I'm going to top stitch at a 1/8 inch seam allowance along each of the tops of these folds. All right, so what we should have now are all the tops of our card slots top stitched. And you can see that in the camera. I know it's black thread, but they're all stitched at the top at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So now what I'm going to do is make sure they are all laying nice and straight again. And I'm going to baste down the sides of these pockets with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I do this because we may need to trim this pocket to size. Okay. Now in the pattern, it instructs you to measure your card slots, and I'm not going to give out the measurements, but we may need to trim the sides and the bottom of the card slot panel. So pardon me while I take a quick measure here. Okay, so I need to trim a little bit from mine. So what I'll do is I'll trim about 1/8 of an inch on the edge, on each edge of the card slot panel. And this is why I did a 1/4 inch for my basting, just to make sure I had space to cut on the side without cutting through my stitches. Okay. All right, looks good. So I will repeat, actually, I'm going to repeat the other one off camera. However, I do want to make a mark at the halfway point of these card slots, and we're going to stitch up the center of the card slots. I'm just using a chalk marker here. mark my center line. And what I'll do is I'll start at the bottom, work my way up, just turn the whole piece and come right back down again to give a second row of stitching. And I'll turn it around and I will come right back down the other way. Okay, so I'm going to go and complete the other one and I will return and we'll continue on with the prep steps for this wallet. Okay, so we should have 2 finished card slots cut to the measurements. We're going to put these aside for now. And next we're going to work on the vinyl tabs. So I have the main front, the larger tab for the front snap, and I have the 2 smaller tabs that will go on the inside near the card slots to close the wallet. I'm going to start with the large tab, and if you're using vinyl or something that's okay to have a raw edge, you would print 2 pieces. If you are using something like cotton, there are instructions in the pattern to print some pieces that are larger than this that would be sewn together and turned out. I am using vinyl, so I will not need to turn this out, and I will have live edges exposed on the outside. So the first thing we need to do, I usually install the male snap portion on this tab, and later on we'll install the female portion on the front of our wallet. So the first thing I need to do is mark my placement for this snap tab. There are measurements in the pattern. Now what I do is I take the washer from my magnetic snap and I place it centered where I need to, and I mark with my pen the 2 slots that I will need to cut for that. Then I will take my seam ripper and I will cut these slots so that my magnetic snap can fit in there. So from the outside, I will fit the snap into those openings. And what I'm going to do is to reinforce the snap so that it doesn't damage our fabric or crush our fabric, I'm going to insert a piece of Decovil light on top of the prongs of the snap. So I place my Decovil light down, then the washer. And for these, because we are going to be top stitching around the edge, and I don't want to catch my metal pieces in my machine, I try to fold these inwards. Sometimes I'll fold them out depending on the project, but in this case, I'm going to fold them in. And to protect that, I'm going to put a piece of tape on top. I'm just looking around to see if my duct tape is around, but I don't see it. So I'm going to use double-sided tape just to cover up this metal piece so that it doesn't scratch my fabric. Okay. Should add just a little bit of protection there. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll place these together and I will pin them together with the edges aligned as best I can. I'll clip them together. Try and line up your edges. Now, if you can see, I didn't quite cut these exactly the same. There is some fabric showing, and I can just cut that off to make them match now. Or you can trim that once you're finished sewing. Either way works. Okay. Now, it's a tight fit to get around this magnetic snap. You may need to either use a zipper foot Or if you have a machine like mine where I can move my needle position, I am going to move it all the way to the left as far as I can move it, just to give me a little space to get around that snap. You'll want to use a top stitch length of stitch. I like 3.5 or a 4. I'm going with a 3.5 for this. And just take your time here. Go around slowly just to get a nice even stitch around the edge. This will be visible on the front of your wallet, so this, you really do want to take your time here. And back stitch at the top just to secure. Okay, so you should have your snap put together. Like I said, if there are any little edges that don't quite line up, you can always trim this after you stitch. It's a little easier. Just to make sure everything looks neat and tidy, because these will remain raw edges and you want this to look really nice. Okay. Trim a little bit more on my back side here. Okay, so there we have our main snap. And next we'll move on to the smaller snap tabs. So we'll have 2 of these. One will have the female end and one will have the male end. And I have prepared a couple of pieces of Decaville Light. Now, this one I did not draw my lines, so I'll show you that. Okay. All right. So on one side of each tab, I'm going to take the washer and place it centered where the pattern indicates. Now I've made so many of these, I know where I need to place them. But there is a measurement, there are markings on the pattern pieces for where these need to go. Right. And I'll take my seam ripper and I will cut the little slits. Okay, and I will also cut the markings on my Decaville Light. I'm being cautious here because this seam ripper is incredibly sharp. It is the sharpest seam ripper I have ever owned. And I don't want to stab myself with it. Okay. So one of these will get the female end of the magnetic snap. Then a piece of Decaville Light. Oh, my goodness. There we go. Okay. a washer. Now, because these prongs are very tiny, even though I would prefer to push them inwards, I am going to push them outwards just so that this lays a little flatter. It would be very difficult to have these sitting one on top of the other. That just means I need to be extra careful coming around this edge to make sure that I don't catch that with my machine. And alternatively, I probably could have turned these the opposite direction, but I didn't think of that in advance. All right, so there we have one. And oh, I already did that. And I will put the male end on this side. The Decaville light. I will add the washer. Oh. And push the prongs out. Okay, so these are really tricky. Just go extremely slow. Get your needle over as far to the left as you can, if possible. If not, I do highly suggest you use a zipper foot for these because they are much smaller than the other piece, and it's probably the one piece of this pattern that I struggle the most with, so I like to just really take my time here. Okay. All right, here we go. So 1/8 inch seam allowance as well for this. And we're going to just go slowly around the edge, keeping our stitches as even as we can possibly keep them. Whoa, see? Oh, well, I came right off the edge there. Good thing for black thread. You won't be able to see that. But I am going to cut it off and restart in that section because, again, these are visible. All right, I'm going to take that clip off. And sometimes with these, I need to hand crank around this edge just to make sure they come out nice and even. This one is really giving me trouble. I'm going to do my best to get around this. There we go. You need to hand crank around the corners. That's totally fine. And let's just hope this doesn't turn out looking terrible. This one is the most difficult, the one that has the female end, which is the thicker piece of snap. It always wants to cause me some trouble. It's also the piece that has the magnet portion. Yeah, this one really just doesn't want to go. All right, so that was not an easy task. It does not, it's not my best work, that's for sure, but it's actually not horrible because we took it easy around the edge and I used black thread, so it won't be incredibly noticeable. I am going to trim around the edge here. Not super duper happy with it, but I'm not terribly upset either. Okay, so there's one. And this one should go a little more smoothly because it is not quite, the male end is a little flatter, so it sits a little bit nicer under the machine. This one is going to go much better. That was much better. It went so much smoother, looks much nicer. So consider that a win for sure. Trim all my little threads that got caught up in here. Okay. All right, so we have prepped our snap pieces and our main snap tab, and we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, so next step, we are going to work on the inside of the wallet. We are going to need the 2 card slots that you just prepared, and you're going to need your main lining piece. And we are going to attach these card slots. We're going to base them along. This piece is not a square piece. Make sure you're aligning these edges to the correct side of the fabric, and it will be your card slots. Make sure that your card slots are facing so that opposite of each other, so that you can slide your cards in opposing directions. So the bottom of your card slot piece should line up with the edge of your lining fabric. I'm going to line these up and clip them in place. And we're going to baste all around the entire edge of this lining. Okay, so you should have your main lining backing piece, and you should have your card slots facing opposing directions, and you'll have this creates the slots for paper money, bills, or receipts, anything else you want to put in there. Next, we will need the 2 small snap tab pieces. It doesn't really matter which side you install them on, as long as they are centered and they will meet up correctly. I'm just going to trim this guy a little bit. Another little trick with vinyl is you can kind of melt the edges a little bit just to make sure that we don't have any loose threads flying around. It shouldn't fray, but this will kind of seal the edges a little bit. I'm going to do that over here on this piece as well. All right. So now we're going to line up with the center of your card slot. So the line, if you center this, or alternatively, you could find your exact centers, but the line for your card slot should be your center mark. Mine lines up exactly in the center. So I'm going to clip that in place. And then on the other side, also going to line that up with that center line. Clip that in place. And then I'm going to just do a little double check to make sure that when I close this, they meet up correctly and that your wallet is closing evenly. Looks good. So I will baste these in place as well. And flip over and baste the other side. Okay, next you are going to need your curved vinyl piece and your long rectangular vinyl piece. Again, this does not matter which side you put them on, but you're going to line these up along the edge where your little snap tabs are. And we are going to sew these to the wallet with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to fold them out and top stitch. So these are wrong side down on top of your snap tab along the edge. Line up your edges, flip in place, and bring your stitch length down from the basting stitch, and we are going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so you should have these sewed down, and we are going to flip them up. So you want your seam allowance pointing up in the direction of your vinyl. And we are going to top stitch at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And we're top stitching on the vinyl. Okay, flip your other side up. Give it a little finger press and top stitch. Okay, so the inside of your wallet is pretty much finished, and we're going to move on to the front main pieces. Pretty nice, huh?